is 21:35, and I'll call this meeting to order. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Motion?
Second.
I got a second. Any comments on the dais? Any public comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Can I get an approval of the consent agenda? Got a motion?
Second.
I got a second. Commissioner Coleman?
Liaison.
Any comments on the consent agenda from the dais? Any public comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Say by saying aye. It passes unanimous. Tonight's public hearing ordinances, we have one, and so we are entering a quasi-judicial procedure. This means that the commission will stop being a legislative body and will become a judicial board, which means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to a different standard of decision-making. The primary rule we must follow concerns testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. This standard states the following: all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. Mr. Attorney, will you read the record of ordinance by resolution or by title?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This is Resolution 2022-74, SDP 22-12, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving an application for site and development plan approval for the construction of a 4,500 square foot commercial building, including a drive-through restaurant use and related site development in a commercial intensive CI zoning district pursuant to Section 14.12 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, generally located at the northeast corner of Southwest 4th Avenue and US Highway 41. Tax parcel number is 01945-001-000 on 0.78 acres within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict, providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is passed. Resolution 2022-74 as read by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Sir.
At this point, I'll ask the Madam Clerk, will you swear in the applicant, staff, or any participants? Before we begin, we need to disclose any ex parte communication to disclose whether any member has physically inspected the property, ex parte communications, or any information that may have bearing or influence on any of the voting members. None. Mr. Farnsworth? None. Mr. Martin? Commissioner Mazon?
None.
Seeing none, I will have to explain the presentation in order, and then after that, we will get started. We will start with the staff overview, the applicant's application with no time limit, the staff report and recommendation with no time limit. I have not been contacted with any third-party interveners. We will have public comments for 3 minutes. The applicant may cross-examine. The party interveners may cross-examine. The staff may cross-examine. Members of the decision-making body through the chair may ask questions of the staff, applicant, and participants. We will hear final arguments. The city attorney will advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. We will deliberate and have on the application. After deliberation, we shall vote to be taken to approve with conditions, continue or deny the application. At this time, we will have the staff overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you tonight is a site and development plan for a 4,500 square foot commercial building on a 3/4 acre parcel. The image on the screen now is just the general location of the property in the southeast quadrant of the city of Newberry. Here you can see an aerial of the subject property. The property is located on the northeast corner of US Highway 41 and Southwest 4th Ave, just across from Oakview Middle School. The site is currently vacant. This is an image taken maybe 3 months ago of the site from the corner of the property. The future land use of the property is commercial. The zoning is commercial intensive. And again, it's a 4,500 square foot commercial building that's being proposed. One of the bays will be a drive-through restaurant with limited outdoor seating. The proposed building and site design and landscaping all meet the Gateway Overlay District standards that the Commission recently adopted. In fact, I'm significantly impressed with the landscape plan and the improvements they did with the architecture over the course of staff review. Here's the site plan. In blue is the stormwater management. Not shown here also is additional stormwater management that's being located underneath in a tank under the drive aisle. The red is the building that shows the where the commercial bays will be oriented. The westernmost bay of the 4 bays is a proposed drive-through restaurant. Ingress and egress will be off of Southwest 4th Ave, and in brown at the top right of the site, the northeast quarter, is the dumpster enclosure. So it's going to be located away from the street. You won't be able to see it, and they should be providing self-closing and latching gates for that, so you won't be seeing an open dumpster. And parking around the south and east part of the site, providing all the landscape they need as well as all the water retention that they need. But again, it is a very tight site as far as meeting all the development requirements. This is the south facade of the building. This is the one that's going to be facing Southwest 4th Ave towards the middle school. Here you can see that they've provided, it's a pretty standard block building, but they've provided awnings and decorative brackets on the parapet, as well as some stonework around the base and board and batten siding to kind of meet that rustic feel that the City Commission was going for. This is the west elevation, the one that's going to be facing US 41. This is the business end of the drive-through restaurant, but still they carried through that facade treatment through with as much possible glazing as they could to have a functioning drive-through business as well as meeting the standards we have adopted. Just as a note, that facade treatment will not be carried through on the north, which is facing the blend, or on the east side, which is just going to be landscaping, but on the other side that's some residential, but there's ample landscaping being provided. This is the landscape plan. You can see all that landscaping on the east side that's going to be provided to provide those residents some sort of buffer from the business activity. And on the west side is that landscaping buffer that we were looking for, where the stormwater is being provided there. There's a combination of trees as well as under canopy growth going on, as well as some ground cover. So you have a layering of landscaping, and there's substantial buffering between that, so it keeps that rural feel while also providing an opportunity to have some economic activity. We looked at sidewalks during the site plan review process. We did talk about sidewalks on the east side of US 41 and on the north side of Southwest 4th Ave. They would be dead-end sidewalks. They're not connecting to anything else. So we ended up deciding that we wouldn't be putting them in at this time. We'd wait till we have a more comprehensive plan for sidewalks instead of having just partial sidewalks that may remain there for the next 5-10 years, depending on when those improvements come through. There is pedestrian paths in red. It's the sidewalk on the west side of US 41 and also the sidewalk on the south side of Southwest 4th Ave. This has gone the Planning and Zoning Board already. With their recommendations, staff included a condition for a 10-foot utility easement along the eastern property line, and this is to provide water utilities not just to this property but also to a property north of this. Since then, we've added another condition that the developer enter into an agreement for a sanitary sewer line. The property in blue there is the property that is in need of sanitary sewer. There is no other economically feasible way to bring sanitary sewer to this property that's currently on septic and desperately needs sewer. And the developer has voluntarily agreed to enter into an agreement with us to help facilitate the providing of public facilities or sanitary sewer to this property. In yellow is the easement that we've secured. Our Public Works and Utilities has worked to secure. In red is the utility line. The solid part is the utility line that the developer is going to be providing for their property, and the dash part is the additional utility that the developer will be working with the city to provide to carry that sanitary sewer all the way to the northern property. And with that, staff finds the request consistent with the City of Newberry land development regulations and comprehensive plan, and our recommendation is to approve with staff's conditions. That completes my presentation. The agent has a presentation for you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Potts, Director of Engineering for JB Pro. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Florida and Georgia. Thank you, John Paul, for the presentation. A couple of items we'll go through is just kind of just a little bit of an introductory, which I know John Paul already mentioned, so we'll kind of move through that quickly. You know, the property is located on the northeast corner of Southwest 4th and State Road 45. A little shy of 8/10 of a total acre, and it is properly zoned as commercial intensive for the use, as well as allowing for a drive-through. So as John Paul mentioned, 4,500 square foot building that's going to be potentially divided for future tenants, kind of a multi-space unit. No tenant spaces have been secured at the moment, but there's workings going on. Parking spaces is 1 per 150 square feet. So we need 30 are required, and we're providing 30, and as well as on-site retention. So the blank area to the top of the screen, just north of the stormwater pond, is actually an existing stormwater pond for the blend to the north. So it kind of looks like there's no space being used there, but that space has already been allocated by our neighbors to the north. The reason why I wanted to bring up the utility plan is, like John Paul mentioned, is we're working with the city to extend sewer on the eastern side to help some of our neighbors who are in need of a failing septic system. So we've worked with the city to establish a route for that, as well as easements, and then assist with the construction of it. So that's on the far eastern side. We still will have our landscape buffer that's required on that side as well. So it will not be impacting proposed landscaping, but as well as assisting with our neighbors for connectivity. Now for vehicular stacking. The restaurant does not, at the moment, propose any indoor seating. So it's mostly a drive-through business with minimal outdoor seating. And then the 3 bays to the, I guess, to the east of that bay are potential retail or open bays as well. The drive-through window, as it is currently set up, has 2 windows, one for pay and then one to pick up your item. So that way it can expedite the process for picking up food. And as you can see, we laid out from the pickup window about 8 cars for stacking. Most agencies only require 5 per code. The city does not have a particular code requirement for stacking. So in general, we provide 3 additional spaces. On top of it, more cars can stack along the east side of the building without actually extending out into Southwest 4th. So the site itself provides adequate stacking as well as a bypass if necessary. So that, and these are the elevations, as John Paul mentioned. The bottom one is the one that'll be facing the blend, which is pretty bare, but that's the back of the house. And then the eastern side, you can see it has some architectural features up towards the front of the building, but then on the side of it is the plain building as well. So we request that the Board of Adjustment approve the site plan application by the city staff as well as the plan board. If you have any questions, be happy to address them.
All right, well, no, we go, that's a staff report, I mean, we can do it. So I already got the staff report recommendation,
Rochelle George. I live in Newberry Place, the neighborhood behind the middle school. I'm not opposed to any development, even if it was another pizza place coming. So be it. My concerns is anyone who's ever tried to make a left-hand turn off of 4th Avenue onto 45 and 27 in the morning to take your kids to elementary school or middle school, it's a nightmare. Because you have buses coming in, you have buses coming out, where 4th Avenue comes to 45 at a very slight diagonal as the daycare. So you have cars coming out of there, they're making right-hand turns. Nobody uses turn signals, so you don't know if they're going right, they're going left. It's a game of chicken every single morning. When you try to go left, if you have the school crossing guard in the mornings and afternoons, and if they're stopping traffic to let kids safely cross across the street, then traffic becomes an even bigger disaster backing up to the blend. If it's raining in the mornings, traffic will be backed all the way up to Newberry Road trying to get the kids to school safely. There's a lot of kids walking, bicycling. We have little kids that are coming down that way, crossing. I don't know the hours of the establishment, but we do have a lot of little kids. They're going to school, they're going to the daycare. With it being on 4th Avenue, it's great and considerate to 27th, but what does it do to the people on 4th Avenue trying to get in and out who live and work there? Because if it's a drive-through, people are not going to be coming, sitting down and staying. It's going to be a constant flow of traffic in and out. I don't know what improvements will be done to the road, but where 4th comes up to that stop sign, there's potholes, it floods. On a good rain on an afternoon, the road floods. If you add more traffic to that road, it's going to become an even bigger disaster for the people that live in there. So we're not opposed to anything. I just hope it's taken into consideration, because even where the driveway is for the daycare, anyone exiting the daycare making a left-hand turn is basically breaking every rule of the road by crossing over into the turn lane that was put in for our neighborhood. So there's a lot of traffic implications for families and kids to take into consideration. That's it. Thank you.
I was kind of curious about the traffic flow pattern you have documented here. I see you had, this is like a one-way in, which goes around, but then you have a left turn to get into like the handicap areas, but you have opposing traffic coming the other way. So I was wondering how that's going to work out. And also with the parking here on the right-hand side, are these people going to be able to back out and then exit the property, or will they have to go all the way around?
So to answer your first question, Mr. Chair, on the southern side, that would be in essence, if you pull in and make a left to head towards the handicap parking,
Yeah,
that would be technically a dead-end parking. The drive aisle is 24 feet, which allows for 90-degree parking to back in and out. Now, if you're coming in and pulling in on the east side, the parking that is on the right side, that is a two-way. So you could, again, in essence, up to the dumpster, you could view it as a dead end. Or if they elected to, you could pull in and use the bypass to go around the building.
okay, so they can theoretically back out and head south.
Towards southwest Fourth, yes.
And I know one of the problems that they have over in High Springs and Alachua is the amount of vehicles backing up into the streets, even because of the amount of cars there and the very little area they have. So hopefully having them go around the building like it's shown there will help eliminate that. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Chris, I noticed on the diagram that the parking spaces are 8 by 18 or 9 by 18. A double cab F-250 is 9 feet by 20 feet. So those spaces aren't big enough for probably a majority of the good number of vehicles that are around here anyway. Is there, and actually that was just the ones on the east side, are the ones on the south side the same size?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So with that, to meet the current parking requirement of 30, we elected to go with the smaller spaces. However, we did incorporate a 2-foot overhang. So the landscaping is set 2 foot off from the perimeter curb so that you have that 20 feet. And then the sidewalk along the building is actually 2 foot wider in front of the stores to accommodate the 2 foot overhang. So typically you have a 5 foot sidewalk, and then most places either you have the 2 foot overhang, so the sidewalk is 3 foot, or you have the 20 foot stalls. We have a 18 plus 7, so you still have a 5 foot sidewalk to walk around if the vehicle extends 2 foot over.
Okay. I'm kind of agnostic on, and we only need 30 for the 4,500 square foot building, right?
That is correct.
When I was looking at this, I was kind of comparing it to the Hardee's. The Hardee's building's 2,800 square feet. It's got about 30 spaces, but it's also on over an acre.
Correct.
I know you're saying how this is pretty tight. I agree.
But we would be willing to work with staff to see based on the seating. Since the restaurant doesn't provide indoor seating,
Yeah.
there may be some opportunity that we could work with staff to reduce the required number of spaces and then have the ability to lose a space or two to widen some of them.
I probably wouldn't be necessarily opposed to that, or even if we could maybe angle those spaces, particularly the ones on the east side, so they could only back out and go around through the bypass instead of risking, excuse me. Yeah.
Well, if you, the optical illusion with angle parking
Yeah,
is you actually
they were a
will-
little bit longer, I know.
They're longer, and you'll actually lose less parking for the amount of space that you'll get for a parking stall.
Say that again?
So if you angled if you have 90-degree parking, in essence, if you're viewing it as 10 by 20, those are 20 feet long. But if you angle them, you're actually 22 to 24 foot long from an angle parking. So you actually we'll lose probably about a third to a fourth of all those on the eastern side to rotate them to an angle.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not as wound up about the number of spaces as the quality of flow within the parking, within the site. It just looks like a mess. I could envision a mess because the problem here is a success. I think it could be very successful, which unfortunately could create that additional.
But we'd be willing to work with staff to look at it from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Mr. Commissioner Martin, sitting on the Board of Adjustment. The parking that's being provided are 30 parking stalls. Yes, they're 9 by 18 in measurement, but we are also including that overhang. The total 30 is based on parking the entire 4,500 square feet. Our parking code, we don't park storage. So in that calculation, we're accounting for space that we wouldn't park. So there's a worst case scenario, we need 30 parking stalls. We can reduce the parking, still meet the required parking, based on a more realistic number as to what we actually need to park. So we need to park the customer service area, not the storage area. We don't know what that number is, and so this plan represents a worst case scenario. There's no storage, which is not a realistic scenario. They're providing that full, 30 parking spaces. So there's wiggle room with the parking to reduce it and still meet the requirement.
Where is the parking overhang? Is it the front end of the vehicle?
Yeah, so
It's the front of the space?
yeah.
So you gotta back the truck in
So typically
to
with
take advantage of the,
no, not at all. So a typical parking stall is just at grade, and then the last 2 feet of that parking stall will be a wheel stop. In this parking lot, we have a curb instead of a wheel stop, and so that overhang is actually, and this is the front of the vehicle from the wheel to the bumper.
Okay.
Typically 2 feet. On larger
Okay.
vehicles, it's more.
I see.
And so that overhang is being accounted for in the length of the stall.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so it sounds like we probably need to address the width a little bit more.
The width, yeah. So it was a little over 9 feet. There's
Okay. In the 4,500 square foot building, you got potentially four businesses. Educate me on how the parking accommodates for employees? So I could see 10 employees at the restaurant, 3, 4 at the other ones. Now you're at 16 spaces potentially taken up by just the employees alone.
So, Chris is an engineer. He can probably get into the specifics of it if you want to know the science behind it. But a parking ratio is to account for the average number of spaces you'll need, and it accounts for both employees as well as visitors throughout the day. And so, and our parking ratios are kind of based on standards that have been accepted by other, governments and developments. And
Can you tell me, do they account for the employee counts as well?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, over time, when you have different calculations, whether it's based on employee count, square footage, but it also is the type of use. So in this, we're using one of the higher uses based on the city's code, which is retail. Retail has the most turnover, and so based on square footage, from studies, the parking account per square footage incorporates employees plus customers with a average turnover rate. And to what John Paul was trying to refer to as the worst case scenario, these bays are currently shells.
Sure.
So as far as storage goes, some may have a third of the building as storage, some may have none, depending on their use. So we wanted to make sure that from a conservative standpoint, we assumed the none part to make sure that we had adequate parking for all uses. Because some of these may not yet actually be retail, they could be an office, which then would have a less parking criteria.
Understood. Do you know, have you discussed with the applicant what sort of hours you are talking about? Because, to the public point about that being a nightmare in the morning at least.
Unfortunately, right now, none of the tenants are solidified.
Okay.
So we don't know business hours based on that standpoint. Most retail stores, I believe the middle school starts at 8:25. So most retail stores open after that. We're not sure exactly, what the restaurant's gonna operate as far as breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But right now, nothing has been codified, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have a couple. So that is a sidewalk to the east of the building, correct? Yes. But I have the same concern. There's a lot of kids that walk from that school and they go to the Blend. Will that sidewalk extend all the way out to 4th Ave? Right here. Right?
Yes, so in discussions with the city staff and Public Works, there are no sidewalks on the north side of Southwest 4th. So we felt that it would not be prudent to extend a sidewalk to 4th since there was no pedestrian connectivity on that side of 4th.
But the pedestrians are the kids, correct?
Well, or the general public.
Honey, kids, like the kids are using that, they walk straight across to that before they put this here to go to the Blend. And now that, if this gets put here, if we vote on this, then this is going to be with no seating. They're still gonna wanna get to the Blend. And that sidewalk is their only way of getting to the Blend, correct?
There is no sidewalk.
Okay.
No, there is no sidewalk. So,
Is there
You
any way
had-
to get sidewalks?
on your slide, you saw the sidewalks, right? Yeah, there's no sidewalks on, at all.
I know, right now, there's no sidewalks.
Correct.
They just walk straight where this building will be. So if you put a building there with no sidewalks, it's not as, I don't think it'll be safe, is what I'm getting
So
at.
right there. So the red is what you see currently are
Yep.
existing.
And they walk straight through the middle. They leave here, there's a sidewalk here.
Correct.
Yes.
So in reviewing that with city staff, we determined that from a public safety standpoint, there are no sidewalks along the north side of Southwest 4th. And so trying to create some connectivity for sidewalk would not promote safety from that standpoint. Because there's not one now.
Am I not making myself, I'm just,
I think what Commissioner Maison is trying to say is that we have right now a whole bunch of middle schoolers that kind of trespass across that property.
Yeah.
And they go to the Blend, right?
Correct.
So knowing that we have that pedestrian traffic pattern already in the middle schoolers, how would we account? Because what we wouldn't want is them walking through the drive-through round, getting in that mix. I think that the Blend would like to expand its customer base beyond the middle schoolers because they're not a big financial customer. They're more of a user of the free Wi-Fi.
yeah.
So I'm not sure that the Blend would necessarily object to making it a little bit more difficult to just trespass across that property and then use the blend as a hangout. So I thought Commissioner Mazon had asked if there was a sidewalk, and I thought you said there was, but there's no sidewalks anywhere around it.
The
at
only
this point in
sidewalks
time.
are along the frontage of the building. There's nothing along the perimeter. So if you look at Southwest Fourth Avenue, there's an existing swale. And so trying to put a sidewalk somewhere in there would not improve any safety conditions. Same thing along if you tried to put one on the west side of the property along State Road 45. Because of the existing depression that's there, plus the width of what is available in DOT's area, there would not be enough space to put a sidewalk to meet clear zone requirements for DOT.
My question is, where I thought there was a sidewalk?
That is a 10-foot landscape buffer that is required by code. Which is gonna have, there's existing trees there now, but then on top of it's gonna have plantings to meet the buffer requirement.
There's a lot of kids that walk through there. I mean, I'm telling you right now, that's gonna be a disaster, in my opinion. The blend actually likes those kids coming there, Hernandez. But anyways, that was one of my questions. My other comment is to Tim Martin's with the parking lot spaces. So I just feel like with the traffic that we're dealing with on Fourth Ave, getting out left and right, I feel like we're trying to do too much. I mean, I thought we were just gonna put a drive-through joint there and that was it. But now when you add other businesses there, that's gonna add more traffic. And if you were to do away with the other businesses and just had one restaurant, drive-through restaurant, that would actually tie up a lot of space for you to get your parking lots and the sizes you want and the bigger parking lot to deal with the traffic. I just feel like we're trying to do too much there.
Well, in evaluating the traffic standpoint with the city on Southwest Fourth and State Road 45, based on the square footage we're putting and the traffic that's going to be generated, doesn't warrant any roadway improvements. And then on top of it, the building square footage itself complies with the FAR square footage allowed for the zoning district. So we're actually under the FAR requirement.
Mr. Chair. And tell me I'm wrong if I just have this misremembered, but I thought that the presentation to the P&Z was the drive-through and one other retail business. It was always four?
It was always four.
Always been four.
Always been four.
Oh, I really had that remembered incorrectly. And it's always been four.
Correct. It's always been 4,500 square feet.
I know the square footage, but it was always four businesses.
Yes. It was anticipating 4 potential tenants.
Okay, I'm just having like a brain issue here.
We anticipated one business being a drive-through and then 3 commercial businesses.
And that was what was presented to the P&Z?
100%, yeah, same plan.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll COVID fog. I never had COVID, but I'll take it.
We
Yeah.
did talk about it being a white box, and then those what are 3 additional units could become 2 units or 1 unit. That's what happens with white boxes, is that they have the ability to play with the dividing walls, and so perhaps that, yeah.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question to Commissioner Mazon's point was, is there any leeway here in the square footage size? Could we lose one of them to gain a few more parking places, a few more energy, or are we at a profit margin point here?
So with the parking, there's ways that we can work with staff because of the parking requirement for the restaurant portion, since it's not going to have any seating. So we have play in that component. Now, as far as the building size, again, the building size is based off the floor area ratio that's allowed by code. And so we are significantly under that. And then what's really constraining that is the number of parking spaces that you can fit per code.
And can we have the power to offer a special, because I actually agree with Commissioner Martin. I think I'm less concerned about the number here than the flow. I actually think the diagonal, it forces everyone to back out and then go around. It keeps that flow. So I would be willing to lose a couple of parking places to have a better quality of a parking experience there. Is that within our power, or is this a state code?
No, absolutely. We can reduce the number of parking spaces.
Special exception?
No, not even. Just add a condition from the board saying work with staff on the required number of parking spaces. And we will pin down a final number as to the actual required. Right now, again, we're parking to like a worst case scenario. This is the maximum number that they could possibly need. But the actual true number is probably much lower, around 25, 26 parking spaces. And in discussing this, the concern over children accessing the site and trying to get to the blend, I think we were all children at one point and accessed adjacent properties, and very rarely, at least me as a child, I would walk out to the public right away and walk on the sidewalk to the property, usually cut through the back of a building and just go through some bushes to get to the property. And it might be a better option for us to look at maybe providing some sort of cross-access on the back side of the property for pedestrians, like a little sidewalk. That way it's, kind of meets the needs of the kids, the pedestrians that we're trying to protect. Just a potential option.
You know, to the point about the children, there's no sidewalk there now, and they're crossing through. I don't feel like the onus of the problem that the blend is creating should be burdened by that property owner in this situation. So, although I hear what you're saying, I don't feel like they should have to remedy that problem on their end. And trying to run a sidewalk through there along the eastern side of the property anyway, they'll end up walking right through the parking lot is what they're gonna end up doing. And I think I don't know that it's our issue to fix or something. I'm not exactly sure what my particular language is, but yeah, I don't feel like this property owner should be remedying somebody else's problem in that sense. That's all.
And I'm gonna caveat, because we were thinking the same thing here. Isn't there a big, on the back here, which would be the east side of the property, isn't it a big, back here, there's a big landscaping area before the parking? So, why can't you, is there something you can't eliminate, make a chip, like a wood chip path through the back where they go through the bushes without everybody getting upset? If they do cross, or if they do cross, it's just something they do?
So it does. It does.
So it's just,
So, Mr. Chair, to your point,
it's private property, I got it.
we would have to, the city staff and with your blessing would have to allow us to reduce the amount of landscaping to fit a trail.
To be able to,
Because right now,
open it up.
because it's a buffer, and so the buffer requirements specify how many bushes and trees
Okay.
and that sort of thing. So we would be willing to put in some sort of mulched or, some sort of trail along that side. We would just need some sort of concession on the landscape buffer requirement.
But, Mr. Chair, remember that we just approved a higher level of density on that next parcel. There's gonna be more houses right there, and we have that code about the buffer to
it
protect
was
the
just
residents.
mainly about this big.
Yeah.
You got a nice buffer that, anyway, some food for thought. We'll let staff and them work on it. Commissioner Mazon?
What's more important here? Our kids or business? We're right next to a school.
My kid crosses that road right there, and guess what?
But that's your, hey, that's your kid. I got that. But if you don't put something there for the kids to cross, you know what I'm saying? They're gonna cross through the parking lot. I got that. And then there's cars in the parking lot. There's a field there now where there's nothing. So they're not gonna get hurt unless they walk into a pothole. You put a business there, and then you got cars going there, and then you say, make it to the blend, however you make it to the blend, and they get hit by a car,
We're not.
No, we're not.
Their dad.
these are middle schoolers, not high schoolers.
I don't care,
It's
they're middle
private property,
schoolers, still,
Commissioner.
they got a brain.
I got that, but I mean, we could put something on the back side of this business, just a walk path.
Well, the other thing too, Mr. Chair, you have to think about is if you put any pedestrian access across the road and through swales, especially through city right-of-way, it has to be ADA compliant. So you'd have to do curb ramps, crosswalk striping, signage, all that in Southwest Fourth for it to be compliant with state and federal regulations.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would just point out in a quasi judicial, I think Commissioner Martin has made the legal point, right?
Right.
We can't burden this
The
property.
burden is not on us.
I understand everything Commissioner Maison is
Yes.
saying. But I think we should spend a little bit more time talking about the traffic flow, because I think this issue is gonna work itself out, and I hope a lot of those middle schoolers end up going to different restaurants, eateries, retail
Or
right
walking
there,
around as they
spread
do
it
now.
out. But can we spend a little bit of time talking about that traffic and more? Because I understand what you're saying, that our regulations don't warrant improvements, but I tend to agree with the resident that especially, and I want this drive-through business to sell some sausage biscuits in the morning. You know, I want that to happen. But I also want to make sure it happens in a way that is, you know, cohesive for everybody. And so this may be more to our staff. Is there things that we can do, work with FDOT? Is there, I mean, I know I'm not even going to ask for a spotlight because FDOT's already said no on stoplights for everything. And I'm not, you know, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to ask ASO for crossing walks there to help with traffic there. But what can be done there? Because Fourth, more development's gonna happen in the back, right? We're gonna have more traffic coming out, in and out of there.
Well, Mr. Mayor, a couple of thoughts. First, I'd like to maybe add some background on the sidewalks. The FDOT has an intention to construct sidewalks on what would be the west boundary of this project. FDOT intends to construct sidewalks so that we have sidewalks on both sides of State Road 45 from State Road 26 south to 15th. Don't know their timing. I say I don't know their timing. Their timing is something from 28 back. It's in their 5-year work plan. So just so the commission is aware that there is a long-term plan for a sidewalk down the west side of this property line. To Commissioner Martin's part, or for the whole commission, staff generally thinks that the best place for sidewalks is in public right-of-way. When we start putting sidewalks on private property that are intended for public use that aren't necessarily planning to use the project that's being developed, it's for cut-through traffic. Usually at some point, that property owner comes to the city and says, well, we need you to take over maintenance of that because these people are putting trash and they're putting litter out there, but it's a sidewalk on private property. It doesn't help our business any. They're just cutting through our property. We think the city needs to take sidewalk easement and assume responsibility for it. And I'm not saying that we couldn't do that, but generally we try to keep them in the right of way, the areas that we know that we're maintaining and we're good at. So yeah, that insight or that thought, I'd also mention to you on the south side of the property, where Southwest 4th Avenue is we don't have that nice ample right-of-way like we had on 15th when we talked about it earlier in the night. There are some busts there, and I'm of the impression that this drawing, as we see it, is pretty accurate, that the pavement for Southwest 4th Avenue is actually along the north, is on the south property line for the property, making it more difficult to get a public sidewalk in there on the south side of the street, especially with an open swell. And then to the mayor's question about how do we solve the traffic issue concern that was brought up on Southwest 4th Avenue. The best way to resolve that is with the addition of a left-hand turn lane. So currently, there's just 2 travel lanes on Southwest 4th all the way to the intersection, an eastbound and a westbound. The issue that the resident brought up today that she's concerned about, with some people wanting to turn left and having to wait, and some people wanting to turn right and getting stuck behind people that are planning to turn left, would be resolved by a left-hand turn lane in between the eastbound lane and the westbound lane.
Go ahead. Would we need to work, because we don't have enough space there, I think. We'd have to ask the school board to get a little bit on the southern.
Correct.
To help widen that up.
And we'd probably have to talk to this developer here about getting
But
a pinch off of their
Right.
piece there that might be, if I'm looking at the drawing, well, I can't tell from the drawing, but something, whatever they got that is
I think the
south
school
of their
board would be
landscaping.
amenable to that. I mean, this is gonna help that would help their school buses get in and out as well. So, and we wouldn't be taking much in order to get that left-hand turn lane. We have the opportunity to have a three-way partnership here to make that happen.
It's a really good idea. Who came up with it? I guess the lady that came to visit. It's a really good idea that we had. Miss Sylvia, it's a really good idea, but it definitely is not one that's been on staff's radar up to this discussion tonight.
Okay, and how long does that take to work out in terms of the timeline of what the applicant is trying to do and conversations with the school board? Can we run those concurrently so that we're not holding anybody up, but we are making progress on all those things at the same time?
Well, so, Mr. Chair, for us, we're looking to break ground basically at the beginning of the year. To add land from the southern side is going to be, of our project, will be fairly challenging. We would end up losing stormwater space, which right now the stormwater system is optimized to that point. In addition, it would have other associated time costs as far as re-permitting with state agencies like Swanee, and then re-engineering as well.
If it all comes from the south, from the school board side, does that change the answer?
Yes, from our side, we could still proceed with construction.
Okay, so we're working with the school board to get the turn lane as a separate project.
Yes,
Right? Then it doesn't necessarily hold you up.
that is correct.
Because, I mean, I'm seeing what is going to happen down Fourth. We're going to need, this is more of a city issue than this applicant's issue, right? So we need to be working with the school board on that. And we can work on that concurrently as they're working on their project. We're already going to go to them for 15th and say, hey, we got two spots where we want to improve traffic flow into your schools. We just need a little bit of land in order to make that happen. Mr. Manager, you're looking intrigued.
The time it will take us to obtain land rights from the school board is probably no less than 4 months. Probably it's actually 6. It's the school board and local government. It just takes us that long to figure things out, get surveys drawn out, get approvals, and then deed swaps. Then it's probably another 6 months to get a design that meets traffic standards and gets approved by DOT because it affects their intersection. And then we'd have to figure out how to get it funded. So this, if you approve it tonight, this business will be operating before we could get the turn lane installed. But it doesn't mean that, we couldn't bring the turn lane in, in the next 2 years. We could probably get the turn lane in 2 years if the board says staff go make that happen.
Go ahead, Commissioner Coleman.
Yeah, I don't want to slow them up We know it can be done. I don't, like I said, I don't want to slow them up to be able to build. We know it can, that the school board will work with us to get that acquisition there. And, maybe it won't be 2 years, you know. That's where I'm at on that. I don't want to slow you down.
Okay. Anyone else? Any more questions?
I would just like to, I'd like to see something that had a little bit improvement on the flow. If you could do something with the angled spaces so we could look at that and see what that is.
So for clarity, you're requesting internal circulation?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, angle on the east, angle on the south. To promote flow just going around the building instead of having multiple areas where you're having kind of opposing traffic. Because you already have sort of an opposing situation with the handicapped. When you have people coming in and then making the left with people coming out around. I think the fewer amount of space we got to worry about on that, it probably would sort itself out. Just kind of thinking ahead, I think that would help ease me a little bit more.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I agree with Commissioner Martin on that. And also, where the handicap spaces are, I mean, why can't they just go around the building and then park in those handicap spaces instead of turning left to get to them?
So if I can, Mr. Chair, one thing you have to think about is human nature. For the far eastern retail bay, if you have to circle around the building and wait for other cars to get out of the way, you'll end up losing those customers because of the headache of trying to get to the store and having to wait to pull around. The dead end is not atypical for businesses. Look at the perfect example is just to the north of us is the Blend. It is a dead end parking. A lot of retail facilities have that dead end parking to give flexibility for the other users. Now on the eastern side, making that angled, I can see that helping. But along the front of the building, 90-degree parking is preferred so that you can have customers flow both sides. If you have them go around in a counterclockwise or clockwise motion, you actually end up losing customers because they don't want to have to fight traffic to get to that first store.
Was there discussion about connectivity?
No, there never was, based off, who's going to pay that, different users, that sort of thing.
Different users, right?
Well, different businesses. There's the potential it could be competing businesses, because we don't know what is going in the other retail spaces.
Actually, I didn't have my. So, was there ever a discussion, or that wasn't even broached?
No, it was not even discussed with the user to the north with the Blend.
I'd be willing to entertain looking at that if they were, for our purposes. If we have to look at something like that, I'm willing to look at that because I would think a better traffic flow, to your point about a headache of getting in and out of a business, it's kind of a headache to get in and out of the Blend. So if those businesses would be open to, putting a connection back there, you'd have to figure out something else for the dumpster, I suppose. But that would not give me any heartache if there was a connection through there. But again, their businesses are their businesses, so they can do what they want, but.
So to the point of that, if I may, Mr. Chair.
And it's not, let me finish. It's not, I'm forcing it or anything like that. I'm just saying if they were interested in trying to do something together, I would look favorable upon that from my standpoint of how this site plan would lay out.
So with that, if you look on the aerial, the kind of lime rock area is storage and vehicular storage that's fenced in. And so that lines up with the dumpster in that drive aisle. So you'd actually be compounding the traffic circulation issue of having people try to hit the drive-through and then make a right-hand turn into the blend.
Anybody
Came
else?
in west of there, they'd lose parking spaces.
All right, any more discussion? Anything else, Chris? Okay. Final arguments from anyone? Staff? Chris? Can we have final arguments from okay. City attorney, will you advise the decision-making body?
Substantial and competent evidence.
Thank you, sir. Any more deliberations? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
I got a motion from Commissioner Coleman. A motion with conditions, we will have that, once we get. Okay. You'll have to do the conditions for the parking with,
Parking
working
and-
with staff.
Move to approve with the conditions of going with staff.
In the parking. No,
That was really it.
trying to get the parking better and the flow of traffic.
I hate to say it, until there's maybe no pedestrian walking over there. I hate to say that, but until they add something, then we gotta worry about students going over there or walking in there.
Well,
I don't know.
they will make their way.
I won't add that. Forget it. That's it.
So you got a motion to approve with conditions for parking places,
Yes.
working with the staff to possibly reduce it?
Yes.
So we can make the spaces bigger.
Yes.
Okay, can I get a second? Second from Commissioner Martin. Any more discussion on the dais? Any public discussion?
About the safety. Oh, Rochelle Reber George.
Stay at the podium right there, ma'am.
When you look at that, where the sidewalk comes across, I want you to understand, and I get it's not the applicant's problem, that's a middle school bus loop. That is where buses will come in, which will be right across from the driveway. You're gonna add increased traffic. I encourage you, before you make any decisions, to come there in the morning, when the buses are coming to the middle school, and in the afternoons. I would like you to see the circus and the pandemonium it is in the mornings and the afternoons, with the buses coming in and out of the loop, with students going to the school, and it's not even about the blend. They cross over to the blend right now, and even now it's dangerous. You add those businesses, you add a drive-through, now you're gonna add even more traffic coming in and out. I sat here and I listened to the safety about Newberry Elementary School, about putting the long turn lane, about putting a roundabout for safety at 15th. Where's the safety here? These cars coming in and out on the 4th, they're still gonna have to get back in and out on 27. Where's the safety there? You've got the daycare drive right there. So you're gonna have increased traffic coming onto 4th and off to 4th for this. You've got the daycare traffic right there, and that hasn't even been addressed. We sat here, we talked about wider spaces, berms, 2 lanes and a turn lane on 15th for the Newberry Elementary School. Where's the same concern for the safety right here at the middle school? The elementary school, you're gonna have more parents with the kids because of the ages. This is middle school. I promise you, my daughter does not walk there, nor will she. I've seen the way people drive in Newberry. It's not happening. So if we're gonna give that kind of care and concern on 15th and not put a business, but yet we're gonna put 4 businesses directly right at a middle school with no concerns for safety, and I'm not even talking about kids crossing 4th. What about the traffic coming in and out of 4th, trying to get onto 27? It's not that you want to make a left-hand turn. You have to make a left-hand turn to take your child to school. It's not that parents want to do that. It's a requirement. And for the people who drive it every single day, comments on citizens in Newberry, people have adjusted their work hours to avoid that entire area in the mornings and afternoons. Not everybody can do that. Parents can't do it taking their kids to school. Parents can't do it picking their kids up from school. The school buses cannot adjust their hours to accommodate it. I'm not against something coming there, but we have to think about the safety and the traffic flow getting in and out on 27. Traffic on 4th, it won't be that bad. But all of the traffic coming to this on 4th is still gonna be on 27. So we have to address that with the daycare. If we're worried about roundabouts and traffic lights at 15th, why are we not concerned about this? You're gonna drop 4 businesses right at a middle school. I don't think it would go over well if you wanted to drop 4 businesses right at the elementary school at that intersection. I don't think that would go real well in Newberry. And I hope y'all take that into consideration. We're gonna grow, but let's grow smart. Let's not be Gainesville. Let's not be the Alachua County Commission. Let's not worry about development, growth, rushing through and applicants. Let's not put that over our citizens and our students. I expect better out of Newberry.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Pro Tem. Makes a good point. Allowed to talk here right now?
You are.
Those I never considered it until I was looking. Those buses come swinging in there, and we're not talking 5 buses. We're talking, sometimes, I mean, 15 to 20. I'm gonna rescind my motion until we can get some more.
Mr. Chair, see, the buses coming in isn't what's worrying me.
It's coming out.
They're coming in, they're turning right in, right? It's the coming back out, I get that additional traffic. I get that part, right? The bus is coming in, they're coming in, they're making a right-hand turn, they're going right in. So that part isn't my, it's the getting back out part, right? That's the part that I think, I mean, I like the idea of a roundabout there. Again, you know, our problem here, and I hope you have fairly listened to the conversation, because I heard a lot of sort of implication that we're not thinking about the safety, and what I've heard all night tonight is conversations about the safety. So I just want to be fair to your comments and your concerns and to this board up here, because it's 11:15, and we've spent the last hour talking about the safety of kids. You got Commissioner Mazon over here bringing it up. You got every single person up here. Safety of kids. So let's be fair when we have this conversation. I like the roundabout idea. 27 is a state road. So every time we talk about improvements to 27, we're talking about going to the state. It's not within Newberry's power to just say we're going to make that a roundabout or we're going to put a stoplight in there, because we don't own that road. I think that the left-hand turn lane, that helps out a lot. I think a roundabout there with the daycare and the businesses and potential growth, I think that's a pretty good idea too. You know, those things are going to take some time, right? And I think that the manager's estimate, I think 18 months to 24, probably when we would see those improvements. Maybe if we were willing to pay for the roundabout, FDOT, but generally it's not about the money for FDOT, it's about whether they agree with it or not. But I think the left-hand turn lane is the long-term solution that's within our power. Right, you guys can figure out if you want it, if you want to fund it, how you want to fund it. We can make that. Again, that's not this applicant's. I think it's unfair to say that that's this applicant's issue, right? Because, you know, according to all of our codes, state codes, city codes, right, they're reporting it right back to us. That doesn't mean that we ignore the residents' concerns. It just means that we turn to staff and say, hey, these aren't going to be the last businesses here. There's going to be more. We got to address this intersection. let's put it on the fast track, right? For safety's concern, right? So I'm not worried about the buses coming in. I'm worried about the buses coming out. But by the time they come out, they're all the way down at the other end of Oakview. They've got time to make that turn, right? And in the morning, everybody's coming out of Newberry Place, right? Buses are done by 3 o'clock, 3:20, except the ones that are late. They're not there till 5 o'clock, you know. So yeah, I think we're having two separate conversations here. One's about the quasi-judicial, this applicant, whether or not that spot fits our code, state codes, those kinds of things. We're having another conversation about, okay, now we're seeing the development happen here that has been, you know, lingering for a decade. How are we going to fix that intersection and make that more of a pleasurable experience for our residents? That's those are conjoined, but they are two separate conversations because we are in a quasi-judicial for this applicant, right? So.
Okay, hang on. Commissioner Martin?
We also need to keep in mind that the safety and the traffic on this issue was what precipitated the conversation about Seaboard Drive, which has been in the works now for 2 years, which is going to provide a significantly improvement, I think, with regards to traffic in that whole area. Something's going to go in that spot, and we're going to have the same realistic problem anyway. But the left-hand turn lane will help. So Seaboard Drive conversation will, I think, address a lot of that traffic.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
I was kind of curious on Oakview, they have built a road going to 15th, but it's not open. Is there any way we can persuade them to open that road up so that the traffic from there, Newberry Place, so the traffic from there can go out there on that road instead of having, out on 15th and then going that way?
I mean, that's a fantastic idea. It's been boarded off there. I don't quite know why we can't open it up. I know it's a chip sealed road, but that would provide another.
County's fixing to pave it, Mayor.
Speak it into existence.
Mr. Chair, the deal with that was that road was not to be opened until 15th was paved. And then at that point, then it would be opened back up. So it was in the development order for the development of Newberry Place.
Same developers that said they were going to lay the sidewalk.
Put a sidewalk on
And then they,
Fourth.
they're not there anymore because that's a new set of developers that we got.
The city actually put the stanchions up to close it off because it was.
Right, but this board has
This
the power.
board put that,
place.
put that condition in place.
this board
and
has the power.
ability to remove that condition. Somebody mentioned that the county actually owns Southwest 15th Road right away. We maintain it, but they own it. That is accurate. So there may be, I'm sure if I were the county, I'd be saying, sure, you can connect to it as long as you take over that section. So that would probably be our pound of flesh. But this board has. Yeah, exactly. This board has the authority, in Mike New's opinion, to open up that cul-de-sac and dump out on the 15th, but I suspect our strongest opposition comes from the Newberry Place, because it's just another way for people to get into their subdivision that aren't residents, and I suspect that there'd be pushback from them, but just offering feedback to the board on what I think is a good idea.
I can't imagine anybody cutting into Newberry Place to cut through.
Let's get back to
Right.
where we are. Right now, we have,
Good job, Mr. Chair. Keep us
right now, we
focused.
need to stay and, go ahead. Mr. Mike.
I want to add a comment at the appropriate time. The issue about a traffic circle roundabout at the intersection of Southwest 4th and Southwest 250th or State Road 45, I don't think that's viable. There's not enough land area. Traffic circles take up an immense amount of territory. And south of us, where 15th is connecting, the state has about 100-foot wide, what they call a Murphy strip, that is waiting for something to, like a traffic circle to develop in it. when you get to this point, that traffic circle doesn't exist. You're talking about demolishing the daycare to obtain enough road right of way to put in a traffic
So
circle.
a signal would be our only way.
I think a signal is your only option at that. I don't think traffic circle is an option.
Okay.
There, on that point, the only way to get FDOT to agree to a signal is to compel the issue, right? If we go to them right now, they're gonna say you don't need it. If there's a business there, you stand a whole lot better chance of getting that signal at that point. But I agree with you, we're getting a little
We're
off
getting
topic
off
of
of
this
this.
one.
So we want to get back to right now, what we are talking about is the findings here to approve or disapprove this business going in where we are. So stay on, Mr.
Now, Mr. Chair, you could make that, the maker of the motion could make that a condition to open up another exit out of Newberry Place. And that means all the people out of Newberry Place, none of them have to go out for it. They could all go out the back, get on 15th. They could go to Jonesville. They could head east and go to Jonesville. Or they could hook up on 27th on the other side of Oakview. And that would get them away from the daycare.
But is that with the condition to make the business?
I'm saying that,
With the
right,
motion?
that we can put that as a condition, right?
Okay.
Because that's within our purview.
Okay.
Doesn't
And
hold
then-
them up.
All right, so Commissioner Maison?
All right, so thank you, Monty, for bringing that up. I feel 10 times better now. Mike knew, so they are gonna put sidewalks along the side of 45 eventually?
It's a FDOT.
Correct.
FDOT?
It's in their 5-year work plan.
Okay.
Just saw it within the last 2 weeks, got refreshed on it.
And that's where we're getting off track here. We got state and we got Newberry roads. We don't run everything. So let's get back to, are you needing to speak, Mr. Potts?
Yes, I have a comment on the motion on the floor.
Okay.
If we could appeal to the board to make a slight adjustment to the conditions with changing the east side to angle parking, if we can work with staff to alleviate some of the buffering requirement to allow for the angle parking and the potential for pedestrian connectivity. If Fourth gets sidewalks and State Road 45, then we can have a nice access, especially if there's going to be a more dense residential development on the east side. If we can amend our motion to work with staff to lessen the burden on the landscaping to have a path for pedestrians.
So it sounds like right now we're trying to, everybody's getting a little piece of the pie in what we're wanting here. So let's, so any more deliberations? Go ahead, Commissioner Farnsworth.
I want to hear the motion.
Okay. So now I'm asking to amend the motion.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Okay,
Pro temp.
okay. So make a motion and,
I'm allowed to amend it or just add to? Amend my motion to, my emotions to add for the city to open up.
well, we won't,
200, to reopen up 242nd Terrace onto 15th and amend the parking spaces.
and the,
I would just say allow staff to work with the applicant.
Yeah, allow staff to work with the
Right,
applicant.
because they've heard exactly what we're trying to achieve here.
your, okay. Do you agree, Commissioner Martin? Okay, we'll sit here for a little while. So he's gonna give him a density,
I'm agreeable.
I think, Chris is working with him very well here to,
I hate holding.
yep, so, yeah, you know, so now, we got a motion and a second.
I have a question. I think that we should have we should up that road, but I don't think that we should.
But we've got into more. I said it a while ago, we're getting into more and more over the business. The quasi is for the business. So,
Okay, amending it again that, not putting, 200 and
40 seconds.
I want to strike that.
And give it to staff.
And give it to staff to handle.
That was my suggestion. As soon as Mike said that, I was like, yeah, that shouldn't be in the motion. Good job, Mike. I apologize.
Chris, you're very complicated.
I think the last time we had.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve with a second with conditions to work with staff. We know exactly what we're talking about, working with the parking places, the shrubbery, to be able to work together on this. And we struck coming into 15th, that's a staff thing. We have a second. Any more discussion about it? Do I need to do a single vote now? Huh? Yeah, yep. So all in favor? Aye. So the motion passed unanimously. You got a business and you're getting a little help with your roads and your sidewalks.
But the state
Okay, hang on.
ain't allowed to make a comment.
Nope. So, no more agenda items. Why do we have topics for the members for discussion? That's nothing. So at this time, meeting's adjourned.
Darn, I can't say nothing.
Thank God.